I graduated with my business degree and told my family I was starting my own tech company instead of joining their failing manufacturing business. My dad called it a cute fantasy, and my brother said I'd come crawling back in 6 months. Fast. Forward 3 years, my startup is worth millions while they're facing bankruptcy. Now they're in my office begging for help. Karma's a beautiful thing, isn't it? So, I guess I should start from the beginning. I'm Alexa, 24, and I come from one of those families where everyone is expected to follow the plan. You know the type. Go to college, get a degree, come back and work in the family business until you retire or die of boredom, whichever comes first. Our family has owned Jefferson Manufacturing for nearly 40 years. Started by my grandpa, now run by my dad and uncle, with my older brother Kyle already working there since he was 18. They make industrial equipment parts. Super exciting stuff, I know. Eye roll. But honestly, they've been doing things the exact same way since the 90s. Same suppliers, same processes, same outdated tech. I spent summers working there during high school and could see the writing on the wall even then. When I got accepted to Wharton for business school, the assumption was always that I'd come back with my fancy degree and help modernize things. But what they meant by modernize was basically just updating their website and maybe getting them on social media, not actually changing how the business operated. During college, I got super interested in supply chain optimization software. I interned at a tech company in San Francisco after junior year and saw firsthand how AI and machine learning were completely transforming manufacturing. I came back that summer with all these ideas about how we could revolutionize Jefferson's operations. Dad and Uncle Jim just nodded politely while checking their watches. That Silicon Valley stuff is just a fad, Dad said. Real manufacturing is about relationships and experience, not computer programs. Fast forward to graduation day. My whole family flew out for the ceremony. Mom, Dad, Kyle, even my grandparents. We're at this fancy dinner at Del Frisco's afterward. Everyone's had a few glasses of wine and Dad raises his glass. To Alexa, who will be joining Jefferson Manufacturing as our new operations manager next month. I nearly choked on my filet mignon. We hadn't discussed this at all. They just assumed. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I've decided to start my own business. The table went silent. Like, you could hear the servers breathing 2 tables away silent. What kind of business? Mom finally asked. I explained my idea, developing specialized software that could optimize manufacturing processes, reduce waste, predict maintenance needs, and ultimately save companies millions. I'd partner with my college roommate Zoe, who was a computer engineering genius. Dad actually laughed. Not a little chuckle, a full-on belly laugh. Sweetheart, do you have any idea how many startups fail in the first year? What a waste of your degree, he smirked, taking another sip of his bourbon. Kyle joined in. You'll be crawling back in 6 months asking for that manager position. Even Mom looked concerned. Honey, wouldn't it be better to get some real-world experience first? You can always try your little computer thing as a side project. My little computer thing. Like I was making friendship bracelets or something, only my grandpa stayed quiet, watching me with those wise eyes of his. The rest of dinner was awkward AF. When we got back to the hotel, Dad tried to talk sense into me by offering to increase the salary they'd planned to give me. When I turned that down, he got mad. We paid for your education so you could help the family, not abandon us for some pipe dream. The truth is, I'd paid for most of my education with scholarships and part-time jobs, but I didn't bother pointing that out. I moved to Chicago the next week with Zoe. We rented this tiny 2-bedroom in Wicker Park that doubled as our office. Our startup, Optimize Now, was officially born. For the first year, we lived on ramen, Monster energy drinks, and pure determination. We built our first prototype while taking on freelance consulting gigs to pay the bills. Every family holiday was brutal. Thanksgiving. How's that app thing going? Christmas? That position is still open when you're ready to get serious. 4th of July cookout? Your brother just got promoted to VP of sales. Isn't that wonderful? No one asked about our progress. No one cared when we landed our first small client, a local furniture manufacturer who saw a 22% reduction in waste after implementing our software. No calls when we got accepted into a prestigious tech accelerator program. The only family member who showed any interest was Grandpa. He'd call me once a week to check in, and actually listened when I explained what we were doing. He didn't understand all the tech jargon, but he understood innovation. Your grandmother thought I was crazy when I started Jefferson with just 2 machines in our garage, he told me. Sometimes the family is the last to see your vision. By the end of year 2, Optimize Now had 8 employees and a real office in the West Loop. We'd raised a seed round of $1.2 million and had 15 clients across the Midwest. Our software was getting better with each iteration as the machine learning algorithms improved with more data. Meanwhile, I was hearing through Grandpa that things weren't going well at Jefferson. They'd lost 2 major clients to competitors who offered lower prices because their operations were more efficient. Dad had to lay off 12 employees. They were still using the same outdated ERP system they'd installed when I was in middle school. I offered to help, multiple times. I even offered to implement our software at a family discount. Dad's response? We don't need your charity or your computer games. Pride is a hell of a drug, y'all. Then came the pivot that changed everything. We realized our software could not only optimize existing processes, but could predict when machinery would fail before it happened. Predictive maintenance became our killer feature. Companies using our system were seeing equipment downtime reduced by up to 78%. That got us attention from some serious players. GE Ventures came knocking, then Siemens. By the start of year 3, we closed a Series A round of $8 million with a valuation of $30 million. We were suddenly the hottest manufacturing tech company in the Midwest. I sent my parents a bottle of Dom Perignon with a note that just said, "Still working on that little computer thing? Love, Alexa." No response. Then, about 3 months ago, Grandpa called. His voice sounded different, worried. "Jefferson is in trouble, Alexa. Real trouble. Your dad won't admit it, but they're 3 months away from bankruptcy." I felt sick to my stomach. Despite everything, Jefferson was still my family's legacy. 40 years of history. 100 employees who'd be out of work. Has he considered changing their approach? I asked, already knowing the answer. "You know your father," Grandpa sighed. A week later, my assistant came into my office looking confused. "Alexa, your father and brother are in the lobby. They don't have an appointment." Well, how the tables have turned. Updated, I'm not gonna lie, seeing my dad and brother sitting awkwardly in our reception area, surrounded by our sleek, modern office with "Optimize Now" in glowing letters on the wall behind them, felt pretty damn satisfying. Dad was fidgeting with his watch like he always does when he's uncomfortable, and Kyle was pretending to be super interested in his phone. Our office manager, Tara, gave me this look like, "Do you want me to tell these guys to kick rocks?" But I shook my head and told her to send them to my corner office. Yeah, I have a corner office now with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Such a step up from our first office, where I slept on an IKEA futon with my laptop, balanced on a TV tray. I deliberately made them wait for 5 minutes while I finished a call with one of our investors. Petty? Maybe a little. But after 3 years of being treated like I was playing business instead of running one, I figured they could cool their heels for a few minutes. When I finally walked in, Dad stood up immediately, hand outstretched like we were at a business meeting. Not a hug, not a, "Hey kiddo," just a formal handshake. Classic Robert Jefferson move. "Alexa, thank you for seeing us," he said, all stiff and professional. "Your office is impressive." "Thanks," I said, sitting behind my desk. "What brings you both to Chicago? Cubs game?" Kyle shifted in his seat. "Business, actually." "Jefferson business," Dad clarified, as if I might confuse it with some other family business we had lying around. Leaned back in my chair. This steel case ergonomic thing that cost more than my first car. "I'm listening." Dad cleared his throat. "I'll get right to the point. Jefferson Manufacturing is facing some challenges." "Bankruptcy," I said flatly. "You're facing bankruptcy." The look on his face, shock mixed with something else. Embarrassment? Anger that I knew? Both? "Who told you that?" Kyle demanded. "Does it matter? Is it true?" Dad's shoulders sagged, and for the first time I noticed how much older he looked. The past 3 years had aged him. "Yes, we've lost over 60% of our client base in the last 18 months. Our equipment is outdated, but we can't afford to upgrade. 2 banks have already turned down our loan applications. We're 3 weeks away from missing payroll," Kyle added, his usual smugness replaced by genuine fear. 118 people will lose their jobs. I let that sink in for a moment. 118 families. People I'd grown up knowing. Mr. Delaney in shipping, who taught me to ride a bike when Dad was too busy. Mrs. Patel in accounting, who always brought homemade samosas on my birthday. "What exactly are you asking for?" I said, though I already knew. Dad reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "We need a capital injection of $2.4 million to cover immediate debts and make essential upgrades." I flipped through the WAF's papers. Their financials were even worse than I'd imagined. Not just bad luck or the economy, systematic mismanagement and refusal to innovate. They were still running Windows 7 on their office computers, for God's sake. And in return for this investment? I asked. Kyle jumped in. "We'd offer you a 15% stake in Jefferson Manufacturing." I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. 15%? Of a company that's 3 weeks from bankruptcy? That's your offer? Dad's face flushed. "What do you want, Alexa? To see your family's legacy die? To watch your grandfather's life's work get auctioned off for parts?" That was low, even for him. Using Grandpa as emotional leverage. "No, Dad. I want you to admit that you were wrong. That your refusal to innovate, to listen to new ideas. My ideas? is why Jefferson is failing. Not the economy. Not foreign competition. You. The office went dead silent. Kyle looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Dad stared at me, his face unreadable. Then, something unexpected happened. My dad, Robert Jefferson, the man who'd never admitted a mistake in his entire life, put his head in his hands. "You're right," he said quietly. "I was wrong. We were wrong." I almost fell out of my chair. He continued. "3 years ago, you tried to warn us. You saw where manufacturing was heading. We didn't listen. No, I didn't listen. Well, damn. I was prepared for anger, for guilt-tripping, even for begging. But not for accountability." I buzzed Tara. "Can you bring in 3 coffees and ask Zoe to join us?" Then I turned back to Dad and Kyle. "Let's talk solutions, not problems." When Zoe came in, I introduced her as my co-founder and the technical genius behind Optimize Now. Dad actually stood up and shook her hand respectfully. Progress, I guess. For the next 2 hours, we broke down exactly what was wrong at Jefferson and how we could fix it. Not just a cash infusion, but a complete digital transformation. Our software would be the backbone, but they needed new equipment, new training programs, and most importantly, a new mindset. "This isn't just about surviving," I explained, pulling up projection models on my monitor. "It's about becoming competitive. Again, Jefferson could be a case study in manufacturing revival." "What would this cost?" Dad asked, looking dazed at the scope of changes. "More than $2.4 million, I admitted. Probably closer to $5 million all in." Kyle whistled. "We don't have that kind of—" "I do," I cut him off. "Optimize. Now just closed our Series A. We're valued at $30 million. I have the capital and the expertise to save Jefferson." Dad looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Not just respect. Something more. Pride, maybe. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. I laid it out. I'd invest $5 million for a 51% controlling interest. The Jefferson name would remain, but the company would be restructured. We'd implement Optimize Now's full suite of solutions. Most importantly, employees would keep their jobs, with retraining programs for any positions that became redundant. 51%? You want to take over? Kyle looked betrayed. "I want to save the company," I corrected him. "Which means making decisions based on data and innovation, not we've always done it this way." "Can you honestly say the current leadership has worked?" He couldn't argue with that. Dad asked for a minute alone with Kyle. I left them in my office and found Zoe waiting outside. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "These are the same people who laughed at you, who never believed in us." I watched through the glass as Dad and Kyle had what looked like an intense conversation. "It's not about them," I said. "It's about Grandpa's legacy, the employees. And honestly, it's about proving that our system works, that we can turn around even the most traditional manufacturing operation." Zoe nodded. "The ultimate case study." When I went back in, Dad stood up and extended his hand. "We accept your terms." We spent another hour hammering out details before they had to catch their flight home. As they were leaving, Dad hesitated at the door. "Your grandfather always said you were the future of Jefferson," he said quietly. I should have listened to him too. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I split my time between Chicago and my hometown, kicking off what we called Project Phoenix. We installed our software, began upgrading equipment, and started intensive training programs. I brought in a team of our best people to oversee the transition. The employee response surprised me. Instead of resistance, there was relief. They'd known things were bad and had been waiting for someone to right the ship. When we held a company-wide meeting to explain the changes, I got a standing ovation. That was not what I expected. Kyle struggled with his new role at first. He'd been demoted from VP of Sales to regular sales manager with actual quotas and accountability. But after he landed his first major client using our new data-driven approach, something clicked. He called me at midnight, more excited than I'd heard him in years. "This actually works," he said, sounding genuinely shocked. "I just closed Patterson Electric with analytics from your software. They were ready to sign before I finished the presentation." "That's the point," I told him. "We're not selling based on relationships or golf games anymore. We're selling results." Dad was the bigger surprise. Once he got past his initial resistance, he threw himself into learning the new systems. At 58, he was staying late to take online courses in digital manufacturing. He started sending me articles about Industry 4.0 and asking thoughtful questions about machine learning. One night, about 2 months into the transition, he called me into his office, which used to be his office, then briefly mine. Now his again, but completely redesigned. I owe you an apology, he said, looking more humble than I'd ever seen him. Not just for dismissing your business idea, but for how I responded to your choice not to join Jefferson right away. He swiveled his monitor to show me a chart. Our production efficiency over the past 6 weeks. The line was trending sharply upward. You were right and I was wrong, he continued. You needed to go build something on your own first. Jefferson needed your outside perspective. We would have dragged you down 3 years ago. I didn't know what to say. An apology from Robert Jefferson was rarer than a solar eclipse. I'm proud of you, Alexa, he added quietly. I should have said that a long time ago. That night, I called Grandpa and told him everything. He chuckled softly. I knew you'd save Jefferson, he said. Just didn't know you'd have to conquer the business world first to do it. 6 months after Project Phoenix began, Jefferson Manufacturing wasn't just stable, it was thriving. We'd won back most of our old clients and added 37 new ones. Our case study on Jefferson's transformation was featured in Forbes. Most importantly, instead of laying people off, we were hiring again. The ultimate irony? Optimize Now is now using Jefferson as our flagship success story in all our marketing materials. From the brink of bankruptcy to 128% growth in 6 months. Parents' company saved by the daughter they didn't believe in. You can't make this stuff up. Last week, Dad asked me to co-present with him at the National Manufacturing Summit about our digital transformation journey. As we were preparing our slides, he paused and looked at me. You know what's funny? If you'd joined Jefferson right after college like I wanted, the company would be gone now. Sometimes the best way to help your family is to defy them first. I think that might be the wisest thing my father has ever said. Final update. It's been exactly 1 year since Project Phoenix began, and we just held a company-wide celebration at Jefferson Manufacturing. The before and after stats are kind of mind-blowing. Revenue up 215%, waste down 68%, employee satisfaction at an all-time high. We even had to expand the facility to keep up with demand. The biggest change, though, it's not in the numbers. It's how my family has transformed. Dad and I now co-lead Jefferson as equal partners, with him handling client relationships, his strength, while I drive innovation and strategy, mine. Kyle has become our top salesperson, absolutely crushing it with our data-driven approach. He actually apologized for doubting me. Mark that day on the calendar, folks. Mom pulled me aside at the celebration dinner. I've never seen your father this energized, she whispered. You didn't just save the company, you gave him a second act. Grandpa gave the toast, raising his glass with tears in his eyes. 3 generations of Jeffersons building the future together. This is what legacy truly means. As for Optimize Now, we're expanding faster than ever. Our Jefferson case study has manufacturing companies practically beating down our door. Zoe and I just closed our Series B at a $120 million valuation. We're opening offices in Detroit and Austin next month. Sometimes I think about that night, at Del Frisco's after graduation, when they all laughed at my little computer thing. How different things might have been if I'd given in to their pressure. The lesson? Sometimes the people who love you most understand your potential the least. Trust your vision, even when, especially when, your family doesn't. You might end up saving them with the very dream they dismissed. And that, my friends, is the sweetest victory of all. Faced with tears of joy,